This program is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Hello and you're welcome to Business Highlights on Trust TV. On the show, we take an analytical look at weekly developments in the business and economic world. My name is Chamun Dabeng and I'll be your host. Today, we'll be taking a hard look at the 2023 budget right after the break.
Now, as part of efforts to support Africa's goal of strengthening...
Now, looking at the activity chart, as you can see right here, a total volume of 130...
Created a Boko Haram crisis that at that time was restricted to Yobe.
How secure are they? You can see security men with blood.
This is the road leading up to the...
Or really, if you look at England squad, you are looking at EPL, you are looking at their names. You are not looking at...
This program is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Now, President Muhammadu Buhari signed the 2023 appropriation bill into law on the 3rd of January. During the signing, the president noted that the amended fiscal framework for 2023 as approved by the National Assembly shows additional revenues of 765.79 billion naira and an unfunded deficit of 553.46 billion naira. Now, following the signing, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, gave the breakdown of the 2023 budget. Now, let's take a look. The public presentation, which took place at the ministry's headquarters in Abuja, is aimed at giving the public an insight into the nation's proposed spendings for the year and also allow for comments and questions from the public. According to the finance minister, the 2023 budget was prepared on the backdrop of global and domestic challenges. During the presentation, the minister revealed that the federal government has spent about 5.24 trillion naira on debt servicing alone between January and November 2022.
The deficit to GDP ratio is 5.03%, which is higher than the 3% as stipulated by the Fiscal Responsibility Act. And we're working with the National Assembly to determine what we need to do, whether or not we need to amend that provision of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, because several countries have actually done that. In the times in which we live in today, that 3% is no longer realistic. Public debt to GDP, we have 22.8%. This is as at 2022, but this has since moved on to 35.33%. Once we, this is as of September, once we adjust to the Ways and Means that has already been approved to be securitized. So once we bring it in, this will take us to 35.33%.
Nigeria's tussle with subsidy removal was once again brought to the forefront. The Buhari-led administration had planned to remove fuel subsidy by June of 2022, but the plan was shelved following outcry by Nigerians.
The projected fiscal outcomes in the 2023 budget is based on petroleum subsidy reform ratio, and that is to say in the 2023 framework, we had assumed and the National Assembly had approved that the petroleum subsidy would remain up to the middle of 2023 based on the 18 months extension announced early in 2022. In this regard, only 3.36 trillion has been provided for PMS subsidy in the 2023 budget.
Ahmed, who spoke on the implementation of the 2022 budget, which the National Assembly has extended to March 31st, 2023, stated that the retained income of the federal government was recorded at 6.5 trillion naira, or 87% of the prorated objective of 7.48 trillion naira. Now, the breakdown of the 21.8 trillion naira budget shows that the defense has a larger share in the budget, taking 13.4% of the budget. Now, the budget also has an 11.24 trillion naira deficit, which, according to the Minister of Finance, will be mostly funded through borrowings. Now, this development has left many worried, as the incoming government may be looking at a welcome gift of a 77 trillion naira debt. Now, joining me in the studio today to have this discussion is political and policy analyst Chibuzo Okirike. And also joining us is political and economic analyst Joseph Ako. You're both welcome to the show. Now, what do you make of this 2023 budget? Is there a reason for us to be worried? Because it has seemed to cause a bit of a stir amongst many analysts and experts out there.
Well, I think that any Nigerian now should be very worried because we seem to be going deeper and deeper into the deficit corridor. And what is even more worrisome is the comfort with which the managers of our economy drive us deeper, into debt and deficits. And somebody, for instance, the issue of subsidy removal. Before the 2023 budget will even take, good effect, the subsidy, it will reach up to that particular June you are talking about. Now, if you make a budget that has 11 trillion deficit and you are just aspiring for a revenue threshold of about 10 trillion, and this 11 trillion deficit is against the backdrop of already worrisome ways and means, interest, and other debt servicing, funds that to the tune of about 7 trillion, way above the 2022 and way above the fiscal responsibility, at prescription. So Nigerians are very much worried, just like every one of us, because the budget is an important instrument of governance. Everybody looks up to the budget for the direction of government policies and development, strategies. And when this 2023 budget seemed to, rather than consolidate in terms of fiscal responsibility, what it has done, is to promote probably fiscal rascality, if you look at it in the true sense, because a huge chunk of it is made to just manage existing debt and to borrow even more, way above. And the minister, for instance, talked about whether we should amend the Fiscal Responsibility Act to accommodate higher threshold from 3% or more. I don't think anybody should do that in a country like Nigeria, where we are having huge fiscal indiscipline and challenges. I think that we should leave what the Fiscal Responsibility Act has provided as, a measure that can even bring about control in the way we carry out both fiscal and monetary, policies. So trying to push it forward because of circumstances of now simply means we are not working hard to return back to fiscal discipline. And that is a challenge for me.
All right, Joseph, let's hear from you. What do you make of this? Does it seem more to be like a transitional budget? What do you think?
I think Nigerians should be worried, and the next government should even be more worried, because this is like a Greek gift. And let's put the budget in proper context. Now, there is an overarching document that is supposed to give guidance to the serious of the Nigerian economy. That's in this particular government, that's the National Development Plan. If you look at previous budgets and even the current budget, we're already moving away or deviating from that, the indices or the parameters in that National Development Plan. Then if you also look at, in this particular budget, there are like 3 cancer points. The first one is the issue of subsidy. I remember the previous administration in 2012, there was that willingness in the previous government to remove subsidy. And I remember the government set up a town hall engagement to really get Nigerians to see reasons for removal of fuel subsidy. I mean, the then CBN governor, Lamido Sanusi, was there, the finance minister, Okonjo-Iweala, the minister for trade and investment, Olusegun Aganga, and Desiani Alison Madueke. They were there trying to get people to see the reason. But on the other side, there were lawyers and politicians, mostly gathered at Ojota to protest the proposed removal of petroleum subsidy. They considered it, I mean, the opposition, and I mean, the opposition then considered fuel subsidy a scam. And so they campaigned that they were going to, first of all, tackle the corruption in fuel subsidy and get rid of it. So this is 7 years down the line, and we're still making provisions in our budget for petroleum subsidy. And guess what? With rising oil price, subsidy is going to increase. Even though we're going to get more income from rising oil price, I mean, if oil price increases, we'll get more money. But whatever we gain in the corners, we lose at the bend. If we gain much money from oil sales receipts, we're going to lose a lot more through fuel subsidy. The second cancer point is the issue of debt servicing. You know, currently the calculation is our debt servicing to revenue is 80%. So for every 100 naira the government intends to make, because this is just intention. I mean, the last revenue projection, I mean, the government did not meet it. So this is just a projection. So for every 100 naira, the government is going to be spending 80 naira, or about 81 naira on debt servicing. And debt servicing is, this is again, on the backdrop of the fact that IMF has announced that a third of the world economy will be going into recession this year. So that macroeconomic reality is going to drive up, possibly drive up our debt. I mean, we saw what the 2008 recession cost the Greek economy. I mean, they filed for bankruptcy. We're seeing what is happening in Ghana. So the third point, and finally, is the amount of money we're spending on recurrent. Now, somehow, the government has still maintained, I mean, look at the National Assembly proposing over 140 new departments and agencies. So the government is not concerned about the fact that there's a revenue shortfall. We need to be very, very tactical, and we need to prioritize our spending. The National Assembly also increased their budgets and their severance package. Even though recurrent has gone up, the civil servants are still awaiting news about improved minimum wage. So there is that increase recurrent, but it's just to maintain and service the political elite. So the government had a lot of time to really tackle the issue of subsidy, the issue of debt, and the issue of rising recurrent. But the government decided, I mean, for political purposes, to kick the can down the road.
All right, so let's take a look at the 2023 fiscal framework projections that we have out there. And oil price benchmark was set at $75 per barrel. Oil production is at 1.69 million barrels per day. Exchange rate is set at 435 naira 57 kobo against the dollar, and inflation is at 17.16%, pardon me, and non-oil GDP is at 214.049 billion, and oil GDP is set at 11.457 billion also. Just taking a look at those particular ones, what do you make of these figures? Do you feel like they're too ambitious? Are these things really achievable for us come 2023?
Well, unfortunately, most of our assumptions have never been realized. And that is because, you see, the MTEF usually passes sometimes 3 days just before the budget presentation. And I think an important point to make is that in driving a budget, it's supposed to be a national policy and not some kind of bureaucratic policy. Our budget does not take the shape and form of what budget ought to be. Budget ought to be a full cycle activity. That is why you see this kind of rush and accusation of late passage and what have you. Now, if you look at the oil benchmark projection, you will discover that currently oil is even selling above that. And each time we make calculation about our revenue streams, you discover that excess crude oil funding is not usually captured. And when you look at inflation at 17-point-something%,
isn't that even still too high? Projecting, 17 points.
When we're already at 20, or 21%, and we're going deeper, insecurity is not receding, which is going to also contribute to the inflation. And you look at also oil production benchmark. By now, the issue of oil production, we should have taken it back to 2.1, 2.2, as we had in the past. What is limiting us, and we are not able to, so that at a point we even drop beyond the OPEC, benchmark. Then what is even interesting is that non-oil sector, which is interesting to me, and I'm hoping to see how this plays out. The non-oil contribution seems to be projected to be higher, and the minister also read that in her report, rather, that now non-oil is 70%, and oil will be contributing 30%. Now, that dramatic turnaround, is it just cosmetic? Because if oil is bringing 30%, now what is responsible? Where is the 90 that oil used to contribute? Because you and I mathematically knows that from 2.1 barrel or at 105 cents, price oil says, is not equivalent to 30, 40 that we are now putting for. So we need to really get the mathematics right about what the actual contribution of oil should be. And again, for how long are we going to continue to export crude oil and buy it back, which is contributing to the subsidy we are talking about?
That's a very good question.
Airports that, the refineries that have been built, by even a government that didn't have as much fund, as much capacity than the ones we have now.
All right, sorry to cut you off there, but we do need to go on a short break, and when we get back, we're going to be hearing from Joseph Ago and let him, give out his own point of view on these figures. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
That's great. This program is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
You're welcome back to Business Highlights on Trust TV. My name is Chamunda Beng, and I'm still here with political and policy analyst Chibuzor Kirike, and I also have here with me political and economic analyst Joseph Ago. And we're currently taking a look at the 2023 budget breakdown. Like I said earlier on, it's caused quite a stir. A lot of analysts, a lot of experts are coming out to say that we have a few issues to worry about. Before we left off, we were taking a look at the 2023 fiscal framework projections, and we were about to hear from Joseph Ago. Now, what do you make of these figures? Over-ambitious or under-ambitious?
I think in some parts they are over-ambitious. We are making very costly assumptions. The first one is the matter of inflation. Inflation is currently at 21%, but this particular budget cycle, we're looking at 13%. I mean, what magic will the government...
17 actually.
17%. I'm wondering what magic the government would use to really push down inflation, given the situation we're in currently with insecurity and also the foreign exchange situation. The second is the matter of GDP growth. You know, I think in the budget they're projecting for 4.2% or so.
3.75.
3.75.
Yes.
All right. So, but the current, as at last third quarter last year, it was 2.2%. So that also is. But regarding our oil production target, I think is achievable, and also. I mean, another problematic point is exchange rate. You know, we have a situation where the ordinary man cannot access the dollar, for example, at the CBN rate. You'd have to go to black market. Look at the gap between what you find in the black market and what the government says is the official rate. So the government or the next government will really need to work out at closing or possibly eliminating the gap between the parallel market rate and the official rate.
All right, so speaking on inflation itself, we've seen the Monetary Policy Committee, you know, increase rates consistently or consecutively, pardon me. Is this something that we should be expecting this time around?
Well, I think our monetary policy activities has been, you know, people have been calling for the head of the CBN chief over time. And when you listen to the Minister of Finance talk about the magnitude of ways and means, and listen to the President appeal on the 3rd of January when he signed the budget, asking the National Assembly not to probe the composition of the funding through ways and means, because as we all know, is the last resort by which the CBN intervenes and keeps the government at float. I remember at the time, the governor of Edo State complained that the CBN is simply printing money recklessly, and we have seen, you know, first-class economists in Nigeria worry about, you know, that there should be a kind of value relationship. Money is not printed in vacuum. It's based on value. If your productivity and value chain is not rising commensurate to the rate of ways and means, is a problem. So the Monetary Policy Committee has been facing a lot of challenges. You can also see the problems around the new Naira note. It's nowhere to be found. The policies of the CBN has been troubled. The DSS is after the CBN, you know, governor, and a lot of others. So I think that we have a problem with our monetary policy activities, and a lot of it connected with the seeming disappear of the original nature and independence of the CBN under the current boss, who made attempt to become, you know, the politics is a murky water environment. Once you show interest there, even how you were given birth to by your mother and where will be told to you. So I think that we need to restore confidence in the CBN. Today, INEC is saying they are not even going to put anything there. So these are confidence and integrity question marks, which can also affect, because one thing about policy is the believability of that policy, is the inclusion, is the trust level that people have on that policy to respond, you know, to it. If you look at the issue of mopping up fund, that the CBN complained that a lot of money in circulation are out of their control, out of the banking system. That means we were actually floating as a country economically. So you know, and they have made policies to retrieve these monies back into the system, and even as at today, is not that effective. So definitely, the normal open market operation, moral suasion that we know as the key tools of monetary, you know, policy by the CBN is not being effectively deployed. And also, certain banks today cannot even maintain, you know, the reserve ratios that we know that are supposed to drive the monetary policy. So I hope maybe they will return. I think they have 17% now, or so, as the MPR, the monetary policy. I think it's 17% or thereabouts. So maybe they will maintain it, or they will go higher. But to record that we moved from 12 or 11
it's
for
15 now.
15 now.
Yes. So we don't have a lot of time. So before we go, we'll just hear from Joseph Agoh. What do you think about all of this in the budget itself? Does it really represent the economic challenges that we face? If you can keep that within 1 minute.
Yeah, I think the budget is playing the ostrich in regards to our peculiar economic challenges. We have rising unemployment. We have issues with inflation. We have people living in 133 million people living in poverty. We have 20 million out of school children. We have businesses, manufacturing closing down. I mean, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria are already crying that this budget is not reflective of what it is that they're going through. So I'll say that in closing that this budget is just designed to just try to create an impression that this government is ending on the eye.
All right, thank you very much. Well, like you said, there's still a lot to actually take a look. There's so many economic realities that Nigerians are facing. And of course, Joseph has brought to the forefront many of these challenges. And they do need to be addressed in order for us to move forward and actually have a proper performance. I believe that it actually goes beyond just the removal of subsidy. There's so many more things that we do need to take a look at. Well, that being said, we've come to the end of our show for today. And I would like to thank my guests in the studio. Thank you so much, policy and political analyst Chibuzo Okereke, and economic and political analyst Joseph Agoh. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. And to our viewers out there, thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to follow us on our social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. We're even on TikTok, on Twitter. You can find us there. Just look up Trust TV in News. Well, my name is Chamun Dabeng. Thank you so much for watching. Come back again. Let's talk numbers.
This program is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.